All right, welcome to this explainer. Today, we are exploring a really profound paradigm shift when it comes to who is actually authoring your life. Because in the theater of your mind, the difference between a belief, a fact, and conditioning literally determines whether you're the conscious author of your existence or just a mechanical actor playing out a really old script. So we're going to deconstruct the very nature of how you perceive reality and talk about how to wake up from what can really only be described as an illusion.
Let's just dive right into this with a pretty unsettling question. Is your mind truly yours? I mean, really think about it for a second. Are your thoughts, your reactions, and your desires actually originating from you? Or is your mind largely just an implanted software program that's running on autopilot? We walk through life completely assuming we're the captains of our ship, but honestly, it's often more like driving all the way home and suddenly realizing you don't remember the trip at all. When we look closely at how our brain actually processes reality, we start to realize that we often act like a background character, like an NPC in our very own lives, just executing code we didn't even write. To really understand this, we first have to completely deconstruct reality itself, and we'll start with what we call a fact. A fact is a raw physical occurrence. It's totally fleeting, happening second after second in the pure present moment. Think of it kind of like a glass dropping and shattering on the floor. There's zero emotion in it. It's just pure physics. True knowledge only actually arises when we perceive this raw fact directly, totally free from the filter of faith or past memory or our own interpretations. Because everything after that glass shatters, that's just your interpretation. Now, let's contrast that raw fact with a belief. The exact instant a raw fact occurs, your brain rapidly translates and distorts it into a subjective memory. And that memory then becomes a belief. Actually, even what science often claims as fact is sometimes just a belief we've constructed from our highly limited physical senses. A belief is simply a thought you've just accepted as true. Why? Because your brain took a raw experience, associated it with either pain or pleasure, and made a massive, sweeping generalization. The problem is, we stop treating these generalizations as just interpretations, and we start treating them as absolute gospel.
There's this brilliant insight by Deepak Chopra that takes this a step further. We tend to think of our memories as these perfect, unedited video recordings of the past. But they absolutely aren't. Every single time you recall an event, it changes based on your current context. So memory is actually a creative act that physically alters the anatomy of your brain. Literally, every experience and every time you recall that experience, you are actively rewiring your nervous system.
And because of this constant rewiring based on subjective memories, we basically end up walking around like an ancient stone figure with its hands glued over its eyes, just totally blind to reality. Instead of experiencing the raw, unfiltered miracle of what's literally right in front of us, we rely on this highly distorted database of past memories and beliefs. We're just out here reacting to ghosts of the past, completely missing the pure present moment. Let's shift gears for a second and look at the actual mechanics of how this happens in the brain. Tony Robbins calls this process the funnel of perception. And here's a truly wild fact for you. At any given second, your nervous system is being bombarded by roughly 11 million bits of information. 11 million! But your conscious mind, it can only process about 40 to 50 of them. So to survive this absolute onslaught of data, your brain uses a highly mechanical, heavily filtered system. Imagine these sensations pouring into your brain like a massive liquid flood. In an absolute panic to make sense of it all and make split-second decisions, your brain forces this liquid sensation into pre-made mental molds. These are our words or our labels. But to make that vast, raw experience fit into that tight, familiar little mold, reality has to be heavily distorted. By the end of it, you aren't experiencing the actual event anymore, you're just experiencing the mold. So the absolutely crucial takeaway here is that to survive this flood of information, your brain essentially deceives you. It deletes crucial details, it generalizes incredibly complex experiences, it relies heavily on outside information you've blindly picked up from others. And here is what's genuinely amazing to me. The brain literally cannot tell the difference between a vividly imagined event and actual physical reality. If you vividly imagine a threat, your nervous system triggers the exact same biological panic response as if a predator were standing right in front of you. No difference. Eckhart Tolle warns us about the immense danger of this rapid processing. When you encounter a person or a situation and you instantly paste a mental label on them, you launch straight into an automatic cycle of emotional reactions. You aren't actually seeing them, you're just seeing your label. This desperate rush to categorize every single thing robs us of the miracle of the present moment. It makes our reality superficial, weak, and honestly, entirely lifeless.
Which brings us to the most critical pivot of this whole explainer. If your brain is constantly forcing reality into these pre-made molds and labels, well, who built those molds? Where did this implanted software actually come from? Because I can assure you, you are absolutely not born with your current doubts, your specific fears, or your current ambitions. The philosopher Osho points out something fascinating. Your mind is largely a borrowed entity. The architects of this implanted software are your parents, your teachers, religious leaders, the educational system, the media. They engineered your mind. They gave you mental crutches and training wheels to teach you exactly what to fear, what to value, and how to behave in their world. And this borrowed programming now acts as a highly distorted filter over your entire existence. This deep social conditioning forces what Osho calls a personality onto you. And look, a personality is very convenient for society. It's obedient, it's incredibly safe, and it follows the herd, basically like a sheep. But that is completely different from your true individuality. Individuality is something given by existence itself. It's strong, it's authentic, it's absolutely free, and it moves alone, much like a lion. The real tragedy here is that society works tirelessly from day one to program the lion to behave exactly like a sheep. And here is exactly how this borrowed mind traps you. Your subconscious mind functions entirely deductively. It never argues with you, it never verifies facts, it just faithfully executes whatever premises your conscious mind feeds it. So, if your borrowed programming tells you that the world is a dangerous battleground, your subconscious doesn't argue. It just blindly manipulates your behavior to ensure you experience conflict or financial struggle or self-sabotage. It traps you in a continuous, unbreakable loop of repetition. This brings us into a permanent state of subconscious autopilot. Because of these deeply ingrained implanted scripts, you end up judging your today and literally predicting your entire tomorrow based entirely on the distorted conditioning of your yesterday. Your basic, true instincts get separated from your consciousness, and they end up forcing themselves out indirectly through these unaccountable moods and neuroses. You're basically acting out a past you didn't even author. Okay, so let's take a collective deep breath here. We've seen the mechanics of the trap. We've identified the implanted software and this mechanical filtering brain. But there is absolutely a way out of this. The ultimate question we need to answer is, how do we actually break the loop? How do we stop being mechanical actors, playing out old scripts, and finally step up to become the conscious authors of our own lives? The answer lies in becoming what's known as the sentinel at the portal of your mind. You literally have to learn to step back and act as the witness. This means actively observing these automatic, copied habits of perception without getting swept up in them. When that familiar urge to label, judge, or react flares up, you just watch it happen. By stepping back as the witness and just observing, you finally give yourself the power to consciously choose and rewrite the dominant blueprint of your life. The mystic Joe Goldsmith teaches that doing this requires a really profound letting go. We have to stop relying on the constant, feverish activity of the human mind. We have to let go of our endless reasoning, our obsessive speculation, and our planning. We just allow the mind to finally relax. And in that quietness, we can begin to listen to the silent, still voice of our true inner self. This right here is the art of real meditation. Eckhart Tolle beautifully describes this space as the silent gap. See, true wisdom, joy, and creativity, they don't live in your words, your labels, or your borrowed thoughts. They are hidden away in that silent gap between perception and interpretation. Think about a time you stared at an incredible ocean sunset. In that brief, awe-inspiring moment, right before your brain started chattering and trying to describe it, you were in the silent gap. When you can look at the world without immediately naming it, a real sense of wonder and miracle returns to your life. By shedding those mental labels and actively accessing that gap, we connect the ultimate realization, the absolute truth of the now. We realize that time itself, the heavy burden of the past and all that anxiety about the future, is merely a mental construct. It's not real. Reality is only ever happening right now. The present moment is all there ever is. And the best part is, it is entirely free from your conditioning. I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder long after this explainer wraps up. As you go about your day today, pay close attention to the theater of your mind and ask yourself, who is pulling the strings of your reactions right now? Is it the mechanical, borrowed script of your yesterday? Or will you step into the silent gap, drop the labels, and become the authentic, conscious author of your now?